Landman is pushing the story into a point of no return moment, and episode 7 looks like the hour where everything begins to collapse. Tommy's entire career is now hanging by a thread, not because he made a mistake, but because the people around him are setting him up to take the fall for something he didn't even do. And the worst part, the trailer makes it clear that once the blame lands on him, there may be no way to come back from it. So let's break it all down, because episode 7 is shaping up to be the episode where Tommy's downfall officially begins. At the center of this episode once again is Rebecca, and she's about to make the biggest gamble of her life. Not because she wants to, but because she's trapped. She's standing in a situation where every road leads to damage, and she has no real choice except to take a risk that could either save the company or completely destroy it. If you remember episode 6, the offshore drilling project was basically hanging by a single thread. The deadlines were closing in. Insurance pressure was suffocating her, and one small error could trigger a chain reaction that would wipe MTX off the map. You could see it in how she moved, how she spoke. The anxiety was written all over her face. This wasn't the confident corporate Rebecca we've seen before. This was a woman operating under pure panic, trying to keep a sinking ship from going under. So she finally stopped pretending and admitted the truth. She needed help. Not just any help. She needed someone with real scientific expertise, someone who could validate the drilling situation in a way that insurance and investors would accept. And of course, in true Taylor Sheridan fashion, the person who fits that role isn't a random hire, it's Charlie Newsome. Yes, that Charlie Newsome, the same guy she had a one-night stand with earlier in the season. Because in this world, there are no coincidences. Every personal mistake eventually becomes a professional problem. And just like that, Rebecca's life becomes even more complicated. The line between work and personal history starts to blur. And episode 7 looks like it's going to make that blur a major issue, not just for her, but for the entire company, while Rebecca is fighting to keep MTX alive. The business side of Landman keeps getting darker and more dangerous. Episode 6 made that crystal clear when Tommy sat down with Galino to negotiate the future of MTX's massive $400 million offshore project, and Cammy was right beside him, calm as ever, acting like she belonged at that table. The negotiation was tense from the start. But Galino came in with a plan that wasn't really a negotiation at all. It was a takeover disguised as a deal. He laid out his terms: 60-40 it's split with a 20% promote, with the 40% going toward debt service until the loan was paid. After that, it would stay 60-40 it's but without the promote. Expenses would also be split on the same scale. And Cammy, she didn't hesitate. She didn't even blink. She simply nodded and sealed it with, "That sounds like a good deal." That moment matters, because it shows exactly how dangerous Cammy is. She's not emotional. She's not uncertain. She makes decisions like a machine, and she doesn't hesitate to sacrifice people to keep her position strong. When they shook hands, Galino looked directly at Tommy and said, "It's my new goal in life, Tommy, to have you trust me." And honestly, if anyone believed that, they haven't been paying attention, because Galino isn't trying to earn Tommy's trust, he's trying to remove Tommy from the equation, and episode 7 is where that becomes clear. The trailer makes it obvious that everything is about to fall apart in a massive way. Rebecca is going to gain a frightening level of influence, and the tragedy is, she's going to use it incorrectly. She makes the wrong call, a decision so catastrophic it doesn't just hurt the company, it costs them hundreds of millions. And when the fire starts, she doesn't run to Cammy, she runs to Tommy. Because Tommy has always been the fixer, the man who handles disasters, the man who carries the weight when nobody else wants to. Rebecca runs to him hoping he'll do what he always does: clean it up, protect her, make it disappear. But instead, Cammy makes her move. She turns Tommy into the fall guy. And that is where the real betrayal begins. Tommy is expected to take the blame, step aside quietly, and vanish while Cammy leans deeper into Galino's control. It's brutal, but it feels inevitable, because this is exactly how corporate power works. When something goes wrong, the system doesn't sacrifice the most guilty person. It sacrifices the most convenient one, and Tommy, right now, is the most convenient target in the entire company. What makes this even worse is that Tommy is already breaking before this even happens. Episode 6 opened with Tommy screaming at the radio. And that wasn't just a funny moment. That was a signal. That was the show showing us where his head is. He's overwhelmed. He's burnt out. He's angry. And he's barely holding himself together. And then, his father, TL, moves in. From the very first moment, TL is on him. He calls Tommy a slob for flicking a cigarette into his own fountain like it's the end of the world. Then, like it's nothing, he casually announces he's tagging along to Fort Worth for an important business meeting, as if Tommy has the emotional space for that. Right now, Tommy isn't just stressed, he's suffocating, and TL isn't the comforting father figure he needs. TL is grief in human form. He's a man who lost his wife, and he's carrying that pain like dynamite. He's trying to reconnect with his son, but every attempt feels like failure. And he's at that stage of life where everything feels like it's coming to an end, where you start realizing time is not on your side anymore. That emotional pressure explodes later in episode 6 at the horse auction, where TL wanders off and runs into Nash Peters, a former roughneck now doing community service. And naturally, the encounter turns tense fast. Nash says the wrong thing, insults TL's late wife, and TL snaps, punching him without hesitation. And honestly, are we surprised? TL is a ticking bomb. But what makes that moment so powerful isn't the punch. It's what happens after. For the first time, TL actually opens up to Tommy in a way we haven't seen. He talks about his marriage. He talks about the pain. He talks about losing their child. He admits he stayed because he believed the woman he loved was still in there somewhere, even when it felt like everything was falling apart. And then he says one of the most emotionally honest lines we've heard in the entire season. It shattered me, but it didn't scramble my soul. It scrambled her soul, son. Tommy pushes back and says something that hits just as hard. Pop. I don't think hers was the only soul that got scrambled. And then TL gives Tommy a warning that feels like prophecy. He tells him, your memory-making days are about behind you, son. And trust me, living off them isn't no living at all. You gotta make them while you can. That line doesn't just apply to TL.it, applies to Tommy.it. Sounds like the show is telling us that Tommy's time is running out, not just in business, but in life. That the choices he makes now will define whether he builds something meaningful or becomes a man who only survives on old memories. And yes, TL's words also feel like a clear sign that his own days may be limited. Landman has been planting the emotional groundwork for something tragic. So don't be surprised if the season finale brings yet another funeral, because this show never lets grief stay in the background for long. Episode 7 is about to put everything to the test. Rebecca's risky decision, Tommy's weakening position, Cammy's betrayal, Galino's quiet takeover, and the personal weight Tommy carries from every direction. This isn't just another episode. This is the start of a collapse.so. If you want more weekly breakdowns, trailer analysis, ending explanations, and deep dives into Landman, make sure to like, follow, and stay tuned, because the next episode might be the one where Tommy loses everything. And if you want another Landman video right now, the one on the screen is definitely worth watching.